I know you took a very close interest in the demonstrations around the country outside asylum seeker hotels this week, and particularly down in London. There was one in Islington and one in Canary Wharf. Now, it was quite clear, we got lots of footage, that these were actually almost happy occasions. A lot of mums, there they are, a lot of mums, a lot of kids, all doing the conga, things like this, a bit of a party atmosphere. And then all of a sudden, buses arrived full of left-wing activists wearing masks, clearly intent, according to observers, on turning the amicable atmosphere nasty. This is what was going on, wasn't it?
I want to know exactly who these masked characters are that turn up in an incredibly organised fashion to disrupt and derail peaceful protests. It's all very convenient, it seems to me, that there are these thugs that turn up just when the politics are getting really, really awkward for the government. I mean, any government that isn't terrified of women and children turning out en masse to protest against something as sensitive as immigration policy is a government with its head in the sand. And I'm afraid actually that is probably what we've got. But, you know, any regime should be extremely afraid of women and children, mothers, grandmothers coming out to take a stand in the peaceful way that they were. You know, women have got many better things to do. Mums have got better things to do. Grannies have got better things to do. I'm not saying the men don't, but it's quite unusual to see heavily dominated female political protests. And yet that's what we had yesterday outside that hotel in Canary Wharf. And all of a sudden, it turned sour. And that was because a bunch of people turned up, masked up, brandishing England flag and England logos in a way that seemed to me purely out of central casting. And I just want to know who these people are. Are they really far-right thugs? Maybe they are. You know, I just think we're right to ask some questions about whether these characters who perform a very great service for this government by allowing them, allowing the authorities to have the pretext to say, right, we've got to disperse this thing, it's all getting ugly. I think we're right just to be sure that they are who they look as if they are.
Yeah, so there's a suggestion that these people may be actors, who they're acting for, God knows. But of course, also very evidently, self-evidently, lots of left-wing, far-left thugs are turning up as well. So you've got the St George Cross flag carriers. I mean, not all the St George Cross flag carriers are far-right people, but there are a few there. You've got a few of them, and then you've got quite a few left-wing thugs as well, many of them wearing masks. This is a recipe for trouble. Now, as you say, these are demos. They have yet actually to really kick off violently, but it does seem as if someone, somewhere, somehow wants one of these demonstrations, at least, maybe all of them, to erupt into the kind of in-your-face violent rioting we saw last summer. It seems as if someone is trying to recapture what happened last year, which is extremely worrying. Well, as I keep saying, what I think is probably irritating Starmer so far is he can't say, oh, they're all far-right thugs, because actually, despite the best efforts of these interlopers, left and right, these demos have stayed peaceful.
By and large, they absolutely have. And the last thing that anyone who really cares about the cause here, and the cause is trying to regain control of our borders and make people feel safe again in their own communities, is far more important, far too important to jeopardize by allowing Keir Starmer to characterize it all as some kind of, you know, hard right thing and launch another of his draconian authoritarian crackdowns. I don't want to see anyone who is peacefully protesting being dragged into a situation where they're on the fringes of something that might land them in jail. You know, there's real jeopardy here. So the last thing any of us want is for this to get provoked into something so much worse and very different to what it is at the moment. But I think this is kind of on a knife edge, this situation. You know, we've got these protests up and down the country. At the moment, they're just about maintaining order. You know, luckily people aren't getting hurt, property is not being damaged, but it's taking a lot of police time, and it is forcing this government to take ever more evasive measures to try to ensure that the migrants they seem so determined to accommodate in luxury hotels can be secreted there without getting in the way of the protesters. I mean, we're now in a situation where migrants are being brought to these hotels in the dead of night in the hope of avoiding ugly scenes. I mean, it's pretty drastic stuff.
And the police are going around handing out orders banning some protesters from returning to the scene for 28 days. They insist they only did that to sections of the crowd that they identified were troublemakers. But a lot of people got the impression that the police were going around, particularly down in Canary Wharf outside the Britannia International Hotel, which is the hotel you're talking about. In the middle of the night, they suddenly snuck in all of the migrants. Until 2 weeks ago, this was a £425 a night businessman's hotel, and businesswomen as well, of course. All of that, but the police saying, no, we're not banning protests, we've just banned some elements of the people present there from returning for 28 days. Even that I find slightly sinister. I mean, I don't think the police are really entitled to go around telling people whether or not they can protest.
Well, I wasn't on the scene, so I didn't witness how many people were being addressed, but I have tweeted footage this afternoon of police officers telling people that they couldn't go back, and it didn't appear to me as if it was directed at individuals. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it didn't look like that. So this was quite open to misinterpretation. Frankly, it was a bit of a shambles on the part of the police, very, very poorly communicated, and they quickly had to backtrack when it was apparent that they had no legal basis to ban large numbers of people who were peacefully protesting on that site. You know, the other thing that we're seeing now, and I think this is very interesting, and I don't know where it goes quite, is a rise in the number of so-called citizen journalists who are reporting on this stuff. You know, we in the mainstream media, we can't be in all places at all times. And some of these people are becoming very good sources of information. They are bravely documenting what the mainstream media can't or don't want to see or won't report, simply by being around migrant hotels and watching what's going on. I mean, we saw footage earlier on, I think it was played on Mike Graham's show this morning, of the police apparently escorting a migrant from the hotel, I'm not sure which hotel it was, basically doing fast food deliveries. So got to a point where the police are actually escorting what looked very much like an illegal worker to get through crowds protesting against exactly that. Pretty topsy-turvy.
Exactly, and outside the Thistle Hotel in the Barbican, which is actually in South Islington, migrants could be seen peering out of the windows, laughing, taking pictures of the riots and basically mocking the British citizens who are a bit worried about their presence. There they are. It's great.
I mean, that's disgraceful in itself.
Yeah.
You know, anyone who does that and shows that level of crass ingratitude to their host should be deported without further question, in my view.
Yeah, that'll be the day, Isabel, but I'm with you on that one. When we come back, let's talk about some of the other aspects of what's going on right now. We need to talk about this quite clear cover-up of a rape in Nuneaton in Warwickshire. Let's talk about what has been going on in Nuneaton in Warwickshire. A very disturbing story. Two men were involved in the shocking rape of a 12-year-old girl. One of them has been charged with rape, and the other has been charged with kidnap, strangulation and aiding and abetting an assault. Now, this was released, you know, as is the normal process by the police. Two men have been charged with this shocking rape, blah, blah, blah. What they didn't tell the British people, what they didn't announce, was the fact that these two men who were allegedly involved in this alleged rape are asylum seekers living at a home of multiple occupation nearby. Now, the Warwickshire police admitted that they kept this secret because they didn't want to inflame community tensions, but they say that not revealing the ethnicity of suspects in rape cases is national policy. Well, that policy needs to be changed then, doesn't it?
Well, I've been saying for several months now that I think it is absolutely the duty of the government to publish crime data, breaking it down by immigration status. I mean, it just seems to me completely extraordinary that this isn't done as a matter of routine. And I know how difficult it is to get this kind of data because I've tried through freedom of information requests, and what you get is a kind of jumble of responses from different police forces that do or don't bother recording relevant information. I mean, generally, all that they record is whether somebody who's accused of, whether crimes that have been reported, if I can put it that way, or accused, those accused of crimes are UK or foreign nationals. And I'm afraid just knowing that somebody is a foreign national doesn't tell us enough, really. What we need to know is, when did they come to this country? Are they refugees, given refugee status, or are they asylum seekers, i.e. most likely in an asylum migrant hotel?
Yeah, there's no doubt that all over the country, the authorities and the police are trying to keep quiet the obvious rising tide of sex crimes, either proved, confirmed, or charged, alleged, that are happening involving asylum seekers all over the country. There is a concerted bid to keep this from the people because the authorities fear that such knowledge, if we knew about what was going on, if we knew that more and more of these unknown young men who we let into the country with gay abandon are committing sex crimes, if we knew that, it would be incendiary, and there would be, they fear there would be bad disturbances, riots like last year. But the way to deal with this situation in a free democracy is not to keep it secret. That is a powder keg. That is a recipe for catastrophe.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be sustained much longer. I think there are moves to publish this data, but unbelievably grudgingly. You know, the government really does not want us to know, and for good reason, because I think when the data finally is grudgingly released, we will discover that it is immensely disproportionate when it comes to crimes committed by asylum seekers and refugees. And that is exactly the narrative that the government is trying to avoid. And what will be interesting is, you know, to what extent will any data be backdated? I mean, have some police forces been quietly collecting this information without having the obligation to do so from the Home Office? Or is it the case that up until when they're ordered to do it, we simply don't have the data, which would be a huge oversight, I think, a very deliberate one. You could hardly call it an oversight. I mean, a huge cover-up. I'm afraid there's no other word for it.
Yeah, on a national basis, it looks to me as if, let me know what you think, folks, by the way, 03444991000, but it looks to me as if the Labour government, to be fair, probably previous governments, the Tories as well, do not want us to know one of the disturbing ramifications of their migration policies, and that is that as we let thousands and thousands of young men that we don't know anything about into the country, these are young men of sexually active age from different cultures with different attitudes to women. It strikes me the government doesn't want to know, us to know, that the side effect of this is that some of them are committing serious sex crimes. They don't want us to know about that. They're trying to put a lid on it, and that is not going to work. Listen, I'm going to have to ask you to go through this really, really quickly, but there's a couple of points I really want to run past you. First of all, what do you make of Yvette Cooper's new... She's passing these ludicrous laws that we don't really need. A couple of weeks ago, she passed this law saying that anyone who packs more than 80 people onto a small boat would be breaking the law. Well, I suspect you already were breaking the law, and you'll be shocked to hear no one has been arrested or convicted for this offence so far, because who the hell would you arrest? It's performative, if you ask me. Now, her new big initiative is she's going to make it, or she has made it, illegal for people smugglers to place adverts online advertising for voyages across the Channel. Now, that is a crime. So obviously that already is illegal. This is just desperado stuff, isn't it? From a government that cannot solve this crisis, but merely goes headline hunting.
Absolutely hopeless, Kevin. As it happens, just by coincidence, I've been doing some research on these online adverts for voyages, and I've actually got quite some dossier of all the techniques that are used to drum up custom to come to England, and the type of terminology that's used and where they advertise. So perhaps we can do a little bit of an expose on that.
That sounds good. Yeah.
I will bring you some of the information that I've been collecting.
Okay, let's do that later in the week. In the meantime, a different kind of appearance by you, but thank you very much for rolling with the punches. Good to talk to you, Isabel.